In my last video, I painted up the Lord Terminus, and this was like a trial video to see what the colours were going to be for the rest of my Stormcast army. But since this is Great to Glory, I'm not going to go easy on myself this week. My son has just left for school, so that gives me roughly 6 hours of hopefully uninterrupted hobby time. And since it's nearly 9:10, I need to get cracking. After establishing the colour scheme with the Lord Terminus, the white armour is going to be based with Wraithbone. And the best way to get this done, not just quickly, but getting a good even spread, is to spray it on. I didn't have the spray for the last video, so I popped into my local gaming store, Mountain Gremlin Games, to pick up a can. Thanks Tim. I superglued the models to my spray stick and headed outside for the spraying. I sprayed short bursts and tried to cover them from all angles, because I don't want to find out later that I missed anywhere, like missing the lower parts by not spraying from underneath. While I'm waiting for the spray to dry, I make a start on making the sand bases. I normally like to use PVA glue and shape the sand a bit, but with the limited time, I decided to use super glue this time and press it into the sand. So I have all the base coats on, super quick base spray of Wraithbone, did the job really good. The bases are drying, super glue, bit of sand. I use super glue because I wanted it to dry a lot quicker. Yeah, it's nearly 10 o'clock, I think time wise. I'm doing okay, but now is the painting time, so this could take a good chunk of time. The two main colours for my Stormcast Coastal Nights are blue and white, and I wanted a mid-tone colour, so I went to a Caldor Sky. The parts I painted blue are the shoulder pads, the weapon handles, the shield things on their legs, the circle parts on the chest, and some of the guys have shields, so I painted the inner parts but left the decorative centre alone. So I finally have the blues all down. It took a little bit longer than usual because I thinned it out a little bit and it became very transparent on the white. So I took 2 layers to get it on. It is now 11:20. I was kind of thinking, geez, this is taking a bit too long. But there's honestly not a whole lot left on the models. Next up I'm going to be doing the silver, and that should go on way quicker. I like saying I have confidence that it should go a lot quicker, because unlike the blue, Leadbelcher has a pretty good coverage and it can be one coat and done. But what slowed me down was trying my best not to get any of the blue and silver onto the white. That's going to be a cover up job that you'll see later on. Okay, so it is now 1:36. I spent way too much time getting all this silver done. It took a lot longer than I thought, but it's all on. The main colours are all on it now. I don't think there's anything else I really have to add. It's pretty much just 3 colours, white, blue and silver. I was going to say green. I only have roughly like an hour and a half to shade and highlight these and get the bases done. This is going to be tight. Let's just burst into it. Just as I was about to start shading, I spotted that I needed to paint their belt and straps, so I gave them a quick going over with Screaming Skull. Now this is where I think I can gain some ground and really get a lot done with the shading. I started with Drakenhof Nightshade, and looking back at it now, I really think I should have added a little more lemon medium to the mix, because it came out a little too dark for me. And again, I was trying really hard not to get any of this onto the white parts. I love shading silver with null and oil. It's just a perfect combination that hardly ever goes wrong. Some of the flat surfaces like the hammer can pull up a bit, so it's worth watching out for that. But on the scales and weapon handles, it was all going great. But by now, my hand was really starting to cramp up, and then I realised the time. Well, it's 4 days later and clearly I didn't get everything finished. I noticed that time was creeping up really quick and I was hoping to get all the shades finished. I got the blue done, I got most of the silver done, but then I realised that there's a whole lot of white left to do. I didn't even get a start on the heads or the hair on some of them, and yeah, clearly 6 hours wasn't enough. But right now, it's 3:14, well 1:14, and I really want to get these guys finished. So hopefully it's not going to take another 6 hours to get these guys done, but let's get cracking. Yep, that's right, a 4-day gap where we went to Dublin for a small family break, where I slept the whole way up and the whole way back. I was a little annoyed that I missed the target of 6 hours, but realistically, a 10-man unit in 6 hours, deep down I knew it was hard to do, and have them at a decent painted standard also. I burst on with getting the silver shade on, but up next was a tougher shade to figure out. For the white, I was a little wary. I've done it plenty of times before, so I should be okay with these guys. I started off with mixing Fenrisian Grey with a lot of lamb medium. It comes out like a pale light blue that goes on really well on white. The mixture was roughly 10% Fenrisian Grey and 90% lamb medium. I just kept adding lamb medium until I was happy with the mix. I did this in one big mixture so I wouldn't have to try and replicate it near the end. So I started off by adding the shade in all the recesses really carefully, but sometimes I think my hobby brain resets sometimes and I forget how I should be doing things. The shade mixture I made is thin enough so I can spread it all over the white and not worry about it going too dark. So after the second Stormcast model, I switched to just spreading it all over and it was turning out perfect. With the shade drying, I switch over to getting the bases done. I start with Avril and Sunset for the base colour, and this took 2 thin coats. Then I move on to shading them with Seraphim Sepia, and the finishing touch then was a dry brush of Uriel Yellow. I really wish I had more time to spend on the bases, but I was so far behind I needed to just blast through them and get them done. With the bases finished, it was time for the highlighting, and I start with the silver parts. I decided to dry brush the highlights on. When highlighting multiple models in one go, it saves so much time and the highlights can still come out looking pretty good. Most of the silver was pretty easy to get on with Stormhost Silver. I just had to be a little bit more careful with the chainmail parts on the waist because they were so close to the white armour. But the blue parts I couldn't dry brush on, so I had to carefully edge highlight each part with some Calgar blue. Now came one of the finishing touches, highlighting the white armour. For this, I switched back to the dry brush and I took out White Scar. The Fenrisian Grey shade I added earlier was light enough that any mistake I made, it was easily going to be covered over with this dry brush. I usually wouldn't go with White Scar, but I really wanted a good contrast with the dark shade on the white. And I have to say, the White Scar dry brush was turning out pretty good. I wanted to go full contrast paints for the guys with no helmets, except for the use of Reichland Flesh Shade. There were 6 in total without a helmet, so I used Reichland Flesh Shade, Guilliman Flesh and Gorgrunt Fur. And I thinned down Gorgrunt slightly because the last time I used it, it came out really dark. But maybe I thinned it down a bit too much this time, because it was a lot lighter when I added it on. Or maybe because it was on a white background. I gave the head 2 coats just to make sure that the undercoat wasn't coming through too much. For their hair, I went with Basilicanum Grey and Skeleton Horde. Both worked well for the colours, but the Basilicanum Grey was more black than grey. For a more grey colour, I think maybe I should have tried Apothecary White. Maybe next time. What was supposed to be a 6-hour challenge ended up being a project that wasn't finished until 4 days later. Like I said before, 6 hours was pretty unrealistic time to get these guys finished, but after spending what was roughly 12 hours painting in total, I was able to get these 10 Liberators finished using mostly the same techniques I always use. These guys, in my eyes, are tabletop ready, although I would have loved to been able to spend more time picking out the better details. But did I enjoy painting this way? Focusing more on getting models painted with urgency rather than sitting down relaxing and just enjoying the painting process. I hate to be a fence sitter, but the answer is yes and no. If I wanted an army or some units ready just for playing on the table, then this is the way to go. You might miss out on some details and stuff, but it's a million times better than just putting down a grey army. But for me, painting is about relaxation. I like to come up with some story about the colour scheme and how these guys fit into this world I'm creating. When I'm painting, for the next few hours, nothing else around me matters. I'm totally focused on getting this unit of the Coastal Knights ready to help defend the city, and I find it relaxing. But this isn't it for the Coastal Knights yet. There are still some more to be added in, and in the next video I'm going for a slightly smaller unit this time with the Reclusions, and this time I'm not skipping any details on these guys. So if you guys like this video, make sure to let me know in the comment section below, hit the like button, subscribe if you haven't, and once again, thanks for watching.